everyone, and welcome to the Wealth Rooms YouTube channel. I am Grant van Sale, and today we've got a great surprise for you all. We have the great privilege to spend some time with Megan Smith, who is opened up the account called Living Corona Positive. And today's video is all about living Corona Positive. Can you believe it? Megs, welcome.
Hi, Grant. Nice to see you.
Awesome. It's so lovely to have you on air, and obviously walked a little bit of a road with you from the very beginning, being your guys' financial planner. So it's been an interesting journey for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you literally were with us from the very start before we even knew that we had it, chatting to you while we were still overseas.
You know, it was so funny because when I got that message from you, I had a few clients overseas and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people started panicking and going crazy. But you were the first client that sent a message saying, Grant, we've got symptoms. What do we do? Like, what was, and you guys are kind of the very first people to get them. What was the thing that went through your guys' mind at this stage?
Well, we got sick while we were still in Switzerland, but really genuinely had absolutely no idea that it was Corona. But when we got home and my brother went to go get tested, I first of all thought he was being a drama queen. I was like, there's no ways that this is the coronavirus. But when he got his positive test result back the next day, I mean, it was obvious that if he was positive, we were all positive because we'd been, staying in the same house overseas on holiday for over a week, sharing everything. We were in absolute shock and obviously very overwhelmed with the information because we didn't know what it meant. I don't think the world at that point really knew what it meant. South Africa really didn't know. So it was a lot to digest, and very scary just because it was so unknown.
Yeah, and when you talk about we, like, who was all involved in this situation?
Sorry. Okay. So a bit of backstory. It was my whole family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my brother's girlfriend. We all went overseas on a ski trip together, which we'd been planning and looking forward to for months, if not a year. And so, yeah, it was all of us together. We got one go.
So now you obviously all got back. You've all gone and got tested. And what was going through your guys' mind? And also, I don't know if you want to share a little bit of your dad's story.
Yeah, so my dad, he actually was diagnosed with cancer before we went overseas, and was on chemo at the time. And we were concerned to even go on the trip based on his health condition at the time. But we decided, as a family, it would be okay. He went on boosters before the trip, immune boosters, etc. And then, of all things, he got the coronavirus. So, that was definitely the scariest thing that we had to deal with through this whole time. Obviously, the unknown of the virus was scary, and individually, we all didn't know how we would recover long term. But I think the scariest thing for all of us was, given that my dad had a pre-existing medical condition and he wasn't in great shape, as anyone isn't when they're going through chemo. Watching him go through that was the worst part of the virus for us, I'd say.
But your dad is an absolute legend, and he's as strong as a bull. I mean, how did he come through the whole thing?
My dad, I mean, he's 70 years old, but he's literally the strongest, fittest, healthiest, mentally resilient guy that I know. And he came through it fine.
Awesome.
Now he's absolutely okay. He's running up the mountain again, doing everything, having a dinner party and drinking too much red wine here and there. So yeah, he's bounced back amazingly. He got through the whole ordeal without needing to go to hospital, without needing to go on a ventilator. There were definitely a few tough days when it got really bad. But yeah, he pulled through it.
Yeah, I think that's such an awesome, inspiration for us all to, without being insensitive to some cases that are extremely sensitive and insane, that you can get through it. It's not something that we have to fear at the end of the day, hey?
Exactly. That definitely is a message that I've tried to put out in sharing our story, which we've done quite a lot of, because people have really found it beneficial to hear that, hi, we had COVID and we're all okay. We're okay physically, we're okay mentally. So yeah, it definitely is a very important thing for people to know that you can survive this. We survived it. We obviously got sick and it wasn't fun. Like I had a high fever. Really, I had chronic fatigue, really bad fatigue that went away and then came back and like knocked me out for another 3 weeks after I'd recovered. So the recovery isn't fun. It's long. Your symptoms do seem to reoccur, but we're all absolutely fine and just getting on with this new normal now.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Now, I remember like me and you having a discussion. I got a message from you saying, listen, Grant, we want to go to social media. We want to go to media and put this word out there. What do you think? And at the time, I remember I'm like, I don't know about this one. It's a little bit tricky and it could be a little bit controversial. And against my thoughts, you kind of went about and went ahead and look what's happened and look where you guys have gone. So tell us a little bit around the inspiration to why you wanted to start the Living Corona Positive webpage.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to that time. Now, I'd forgotten that I'd bounced it off you because we were chatting a lot back then.
Yeah.
And you said, no, it'll be bad for business because everyone will be scared of you. Little did we know at that point that our business was going to be shut down in any case because of lockdown.
Exactly.
But, yeah. So, it took us a few days to like process in our own minds that we had the coronavirus. And once I started processing it myself and getting over the overwhelm, and started sharing with my friends, which, I mean, I'd gotten back from overseas. My friends were expecting me to be around and calling them and catching up, but I wasn't because I was sick and in official quarantine. So I had to start telling them. And when I did, I found out, you're just nervous because you don't know how they're going to react. But everyone immediately off the bat was so supportive, just saying, what can I do to help? Do you guys need anything? Can we do your grocery shopping for you? And then after the support, they were like, well, are you guys okay? What is going on? Like, are you alive? And I think a lot of people, especially in the beginning, just assume you get corona and you die. Like there's no light when it comes to corona. There's nothing positive that comes of this virus. So we realized that people needed to understand that it wasn't all doom and gloom, that it didn't just mean that if you got the virus that, your life was over. So we decided to share our journey and to share how we were and to share how we were coping with it, because there is no medication that you can take for the coronavirus other than everything that you normally would do to support your immune system. And so, we learned a lot in that time of how to do that. And we are a healthy family as it is. So the things that we were doing, we were sharing with people to give them tips on how to prepare your immune system and then to cope with it if you get it, both physically and mentally. Because I think that was one of the things that we, perhaps as a family, that is another one of our strong points, is that together we're very emotionally resilient. And that's something that's really important during this time, because there's a flood of negative emotions that come in due to the coronavirus. Fear, guilt, loss of control, worry, and stress. So being able to deal with that on an emotional side, which we did quite well as a family, and that carried us through, our positive mindset, was something that we shared with people through this Instagram account a lot. And as we did it, I mean, people's questions and comments and gratitude for the account were literally flooding in, which made us realize that it was definitely the right thing to do, to open this account, to share our story, to talk about what was going on and what wasn't going on. And it grew so quickly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember those numbers. They were like going up so fast. I couldn't believe it myself. It's one time in my life, I actually am so stoked to be wrong, and it's really worked out. And I think you've encouraged and you've supported so many people through this crazy time, because it really was unknown at that time when you started it, right?
Yeah. But I think, Grant, you were maybe right in having reservations about it, because it's not something, it is right that you don't want to like shout it from the rooftops, but it's a message that we needed to convey responsibly and in the right way. And we put thought into making sure that we weren't adding any fear to people's
Mm.
perception of the virus. And I think we got that right, because we had, the right support around us, including yourself. You were very supportive of us from the start, and I bounced a lot of things off you. So thank you for that.
Oh man, it's an absolute pleasure. We try where we can. Now, regarding the account, you guys have got over 10,000 subscribers or followers now. What is the biggest question that the people have been asking during this time?
Do I have corona? Really, actually,
Have you guys become like medical doctors all of a sudden?
No, not at all. Because, there is no really, like, we can't diagnose, do you have corona? The only thing that can do that is the test. But I think what I diagnosed really early on is that this was a disease that was affecting our mental health even more so than our physical health. Because what I realized very early on is so many, like Julia and I in the beginning, Julia, who started the account with me, we were taking shifts and answering messages. That's how many messages were coming in of people who were convinced they had the virus, when there were only like 100 people in the country who had the virus, but they had a snivelly nose or a stiff neck or any random symptom. They were like, we've got the virus, and then flat panic. Or they were so worried about potentially getting the virus because it was coming into the country that was making them sick. And then they thought they had the virus. So we realized that people's worry around the virus was making them physically sick, literally worrying themselves sick. And I think that that's definitely continued. I think any sort of physical discomfort that people are feeling, they assume that it's corona. And then the implications of having corona flood their system with stress and worry. Because, if you do get the virus, it's not just the flu. You've got to quarantine. And there's a lot of logistical difficulties with quarantining. For example, you can't go to the store. You have to ask people to do that for you. And your work is obviously affected. And then the unknown with the recovery. The recovery of the coronavirus is still quite unknown, and it seems to rebound again and come back. People recover, and then their symptoms can return, especially with the fatigue. So yeah, that was definitely, that has been the number one question: do I have corona?
So it's basically just paranoia, really.
Definitely.
Awesome. Now tell me, you guys were involved in some immunity trials. Whatever happened with that?
Okay, so we were asked to be part of these research projects that a lab in Cape Town is doing to study the antibodies and to study the antibodies of the coronavirus, and to develop an antibody test where I've got a lot of friends who were overseas at the beginning of the year, and they're convinced that they had the virus because they can remember being sick, but they didn't have at that point any reason to test whether they had it or not. However, if they did have it, they would have antibodies. And so the test that's available now is a test to test for the pathogen as to whether you have the virus or not. But the next test that they're developing is a test to test if you've got the antibodies, because if you have the antibodies, then you've got a defense mechanism against getting the virus again, and that contributes towards herd immunity, which is essentially what the world is trying to get to fight off the virus naturally. So these tests are being developed. There's a lot of legislation and hurdles involved in getting this test to market, but I know that they are advancing weekly. And they will be developing a test that you and I can purchase, and it hopefully is going to be just a little finger prick test, and they can see then whether you've got the antibody for the virus, which will then help in determining, can I go back to work, can I go back into society, etc., etc. Because there's a lot of people who've come across the virus, haven't gotten sick at all, have developed antibodies, and they don't even know about it. I mean, for example, Julia, my brother's girlfriend who got it, she had a headache for half a day, but she tested positive for over 3 weeks. So she would, if it hadn't been for us testing positive, she would probably have never ever known that she had corona.
Never even have thought of it. Hey, I've actually had a few clients that had to go in for operations, and because you go for operation, you need to have a corona test, and they tested positive without a single symptom. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Now,
Yeah.
what's happening? I mean, I've been listening to the news and following some of the stuff regarding the corona, and I hear that there is, especially in South Africa, they're doing some vaccine trials. Have you followed any of that?
No,
Yeah,
I know that they are doing plasma donations,
okay.
but
Yeah, you would know a lot more about it than I do. So another question I've got, it's an interesting one. Can you get corona twice?
Well, the professor of immunology that we were dealing with when we were doing the antibody research explained to us that pretty much no, you can't, because your body has developed antibodies, and so the likeliness of you getting it again is not likely. And if you do get it again, it's not going to be as bad because you have a natural defense system to defend the virus before it can attack you. However, I spoke to a girl last week, Melina. There's an interview with her on my Instagram account, and she did in fact get the virus twice. And since I think she's the first person in South Africa to get the virus twice, and it's now coming out that there are more people in South Africa who have gotten the virus for a second time, as well as globally. So yes, it's possible, but
Sure.
it's still highly unlikely. And the statistics are extremely, extremely low for people who are going to get it again. So yeah, I'm sticking with no, I'm not going to get it again. It makes me feel safer.
Now, I think your immunity is very strong, and I mean, you're very healthy, and you really pay attention to boosting your immune system and all that. So it's probably very unlikely for you to get it twice, eh?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, Meg, I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure everyone that's listening is also really appreciative of your time. Is there any last words of motivation you want to leave the nation in this current state?
Yeah, I want to say that, it's very, very possible, and it's most likely that anyone and everyone who contracts the virus is going to recover. There are definitely cases of people who need hospitalization and unfortunately who pass away from the virus. But the likeliness of that is currently the statistics are less than 1% of people who contract the virus are going to need to go into hospital or who are going to pass away. And that doesn't even take into account everyone who's come across the virus, contracted it, and recovered without them even knowing. So the statistics are actually even lower than that. So you can recover from this virus. And I don't think, in my opinion, that there's any reason to be fearful of it. And this is really just a time we need to look after our mental health and focus on building ourselves as individuals and spending time with our families and loved ones.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. I think that is extremely good advice that we should all adhere to. Look after our mental health and take it slowly and pace ourselves through this crazy time. Meg, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And everyone, if you enjoyed that, give us a thumbs up, please. And if you want to be notified going forward of any other videos, hit subscribe below and feel free to share with family and friends that might find it helpful. For now, that's a wrap. Ciao.
Ciao.